Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, a major protest has erupted outside the Bangladesh High Commission in Delhi today in the wake of the brutal killing of a Hindu man, Dipu Chandra Das, by an Islamist mob in Bangladesh's Mymensingh last week. The demonstrations are being led by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Bajrang Dal to denounce alleged atrocities against Hindus and vandalism of their religious places in Bangladesh. To contain the situation, the police lathi-charged protesters, and tensions rose when a massive crowd of demonstrators pushed the security barricades, in fact managing to break at least 2 layers of barricades. But what we'd like to now do is explain to you what the Flashpoint is all about. Bangladesh and India relations have been terrible now for a period of time. How have they gotten even more problematic? Well, this is a summary in a sense of events over the last couple of weeks. But of course, do remember that ties between Delhi and Dhaka were further strained after the International Crimes Tribunal convicted Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister, of crimes against humanity and sentenced her to death. Now, Bangladesh has been demanding that India hand over the Awami League leader. Now, India, for our part, India said that it remains committed to the best interests of the Bangladeshi people, including in peace, democracy, inclusion and stability in that country. We've not committed to returning Sheikh Hasina, neither have we said that she will remain. That's the position for the moment. Now, the killing of Sharif Osman Hadi, a key figure of the 2024 Bangladesh protests with a known anti-India stance, triggered a fresh wave of anti-India protests. In the aftermath of the killing last week, a rumor started that Hadi's killers had fled to India, leading to anti-India slogans in protest rallies. And then a Hindu man, Dipu Chandra Das, was beaten to death. He was lynched, his body set on fire in the middle of a highway in Mymensingh. His killing has set off widespread protests in India, with agitators highlighting the strengthening of radical forces in post-Hasina Bangladesh. Since then, there have been protests and counter-protests at Indian missions in Bangladesh and outside Bangladeshi missions in India. Now, the Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi and others have temporarily suspended all visa and consular operations, citing unavoidable circumstances. So what's the bottom line? Well, from an India standpoint, from fighting for independence against Pakistan way back in 1971 to now warmly hosting its leaders, Bangladesh has executed a stunning foreign policy U-turn, at the core of which appears to be an anti-India sentiment. A nation born to protect its Bengali language and identity, it appears as sliding into religious extremism, where mobs routinely vandalize newspapers. We saw that just a few days back. Cultural centers are attacked and individuals are being lynched on mere whispers of blasphemy. The dream of liberation from what we've seen in 1971 and that exceedingly close friendship appears now to be quite distant. Well, joining us now, a very special guest, Muhammad Ali Arafat, Information Minister in Sheikh Hasina's cabinet, he was a central leader there. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Now, those opposed to Sheikh Hasina insist that, in fact, it's her messages, whether it's on Telegram or on Facebook or elsewhere, that's triggering a lot of the violence in Bangladesh. How would you respond?
That is absolutely not true. What kind of messages that they're referring to, and how those messages can be, a contributing factor for this kind of vandalism and this kind of violence of, the radical Islamist, as simple as that. And these people are like that. Mm-hmm. They are very violent people. They resort to violence to impose their article of faith onto others. They are very intolerant people. They don't want to believe in any kind of, dissenting opinion. So the very nature of this kind of people who are dominating our society right now, even though I believe they're minority, but majority peace-loving people are actually just, not as loud as they are. Therefore, these people are being seen more in the country, and apparently it looks like the country is sliding down to this kind of situation. But actually, it's not. I can still tell you, majority of the people are peace-loving. They are not radical Islamist, and given a chance to vote, they will again vote for a secular political party to the
How
government.
confident are you of that? Because if that doesn't happen in the month of February, then Bangladesh will slide down that very slippery slope. The last thing we want is a government that believes in anarchy or supports anarchy, a hardline Islam which targets minorities and represents a threat to the region. Is there a real possibility that might happen?
Okay, to answer your question, how confident I am, instead of giving you my opinion, let me give you a logic. See, Awami League represent the pro-71 values and the secular values, right? So Awami League's opponent, like Yunus and all of those radical Islamists who are backing him, they want to say that Awami League has become very unpopular and people have rejected Awami League. So had that been the case, then they could have taken this opportunity to allow Awami League to the election and let the people decide how do they feel about Awami League. But they did not do it. They have actually blocked Awami League illegally by banning it and not allowing it to come to the election.
No, but Mr. Arafat, it's just been a year or so since the events in Bangladesh where Sheikh Hasina had to flee her own country. You say that the Awami League is still viable in Bangladesh as a popular political option, but the fact of the matter is the protests, the sizes that we saw then, seem to indicate that people had had enough of the Awami League.
Okay, fine. If this is the case, then why don't they create a level playing ground and allow all the parties to participate and let people decide and vote? So why aren't they doing it? Let people reject Awami League through a election. Why they're not allowing that to happen? Because they know deep inside, if they allow Awami League will be voted to power again by the people. That's why they're not doing it. That would have been the best way to reject Awami League. They're not taking that chance. This is why they're not doing it. And as you were saying, like only a little bit before, a few months before, 1 year, this, 2024, 5th August, this is what happened. That was a full-scale insurgency.
Yes.
I can give you many instances of that. It was not uprising and whatever whatsoever. Awami League was very, very popular, even in 2024. But, because the conspiracy that was, playing behind it,
but
that they started
whose
killing
conspiracy
people.
was it,
and
sir?
When they started
because that
people,
larger question is just not answered, even today. Whose conspiracy is it? Who triggered the collapse of the regime?
So those exactly. So if there was an impartial investigation, then everything would have come out.
I'm asking for your opinion.
We constituted.
I'm asking for your opinion.
So there are many actors in play. Just take a look at the fact that United Nations Fact Findings Committee, they said like around 1,400 people died, right? Between July 15th to July 5th in 2024.
Yes.
But have you received the names of those 1,400 people from them? It has been more than a year. Why can't they produce the names? If this many people got killed, they should have had some identity, family members and all that. They could not produce names. Yunus government so far produced 800 names, and many of the names have been found or reported by the local media. These are all fake. So therefore, there are so many people from our side also got killed. So many members of the law enforcement agencies were killed. So it was a war waged against the government, a legally, legitimately established government, by all the extremist people,
who was,
radical extremists.
No, so sir, it's been so many months and we still don't have an answer. We know who was part of the fighting. We know about the names of the radical leaders. We know about what they did. I'm asking whether it was a homegrown movement against the Awami League or it was triggered by somebody. How do you trigger a movement this large, almost overnight?
This is exactly what happened. Just in 2 weeks or 3 weeks time, the whole thing happened.
And we are no closer to knowing how it happened, what the forces were.
Yeah,
because you are on the one hand saying that the Awami League still enjoys popularity in your country. On the other hand, just in August last year or so, you talk about this massive uprising. And yet when I ask you who was behind that massive uprising, there are no clear answers.
No, that's what I was going to tell you. See, the thing is, we have been removed from the power, right? And the way it happened, that many of us were, at the brink of risking our life. And all those people could not escape, have been sent into jail. So we are not in a position to investigate and come up with some kind of answer to give it to you. It was the responsibility of the government who formed it, but they did not do it. They're just playing around. So I can only give you some kind of circumstantial evidences. I can only give you my experiences that I have been through during that time, sitting in the very helm of the government. And from that, I can tell you it was a conspiracy because all those radical elements were engaged. Tell me one thing, in a peaceful protest, do you see that anyone would try to attempt to attack the aviation fuel depot? That happened in July, August. Do you think there will be a jailbreak where that will take out, top-notch jihadists out of the jail? They will loot arms. Do you think they will try to go make multiple attempts to attack the armory in the Gulshan Shooting Club in Narayanganj? So those kind of things happened, but all stayed under the carpet. Even the media also did not reveal it. Unfortunately, I'm here willing to share with you all the information, and I think the whole world needs to know what actually happened.
Yeah.
They just call it a mass uprising.
Okay,
So
Mohammed Ali Arafat, I take your point, and you raise very strong points. I think for the moment we can all hope, and you'd agree, that there needs to be peace in Bangladesh, because that's something that's critically important for millions of people on the ground. But we will resume this conversation later on. I'm joined at this stage by Shafqat Rabi, Mohammad Kamruzaman, and Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, India's former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Mr. Chakravarti, let me come to you first. It's a slippery sort of scenario right now with protests outside the Bangladesh High Commission. There have been protests there taking place as well. Consular services over here have stopped for the moment. This is in no one's interest, neither the protests there nor the protests over here, because the fundamental link between the two countries is very strong. In a scenario like this, what can be done to to stabilize the scenario?
Well, I think the answer lies in Dhaka and what the government does there. Because in my view, all these demonstrations and the violence has been carefully orchestrated. And I think the police and other security services have been generally slow to react. And they are also scared, I think, because of what happened before. Because if you remember, there are a lot of policemen were killed during that agitation also. And then many of them fled their positions in the police station. So I think this is the kind of situation. Basically, there is a breakdown in law and order. And there is the army standing by and not really wanting to interfere. So unless the law and order situation is brought under control, I think even elections will be difficult. I know that the army and the election commission have been confabulating to decide how to manage the security. And I hope they do, because that is the ultimate solution.
Right.
To have a democratically elected government supported by the people in a free, fair, credible and inclusive election, which is what is going to solve the problem.
Sure.
And all this what's happening now is certainly not good for either country.
No, it isn't. Mohammad Kamruzaman, one of the biggest worries, and as a senior journalist, I'm sure you recognize this, attacks on the media. That offices are being burned down, the journalists are being threatened. Therefore, is this not Bangladesh, getting into a state of anarchy where information is restricted, journalists are restricted, there are problems as it is with the law and order situation. We've seen the size of the protests after the killing of Sharif Osman Hadi, video of your parliament, people getting in over there. So are we not on a rather precipitous slide in Bangladesh?
Thank you, Vishnu, for raising this very important point. Actually, of course, as a journalist, I also condemn this attack on media house, attack on journalists, senior journalists. But unfortunately, if it was not happened earlier, I think it's a sequence of the previous happened. For example, the attack on Delhi Amar Desh, Delhi Shongram, and attack on Mahmudur Rahman, even in the court premise, and he was blooded due to the severe attack. And very senior editor Abul Asad was attacked and harassed openly by Chhatra League, and at that time the then Awami League government didn't take any action against that. So actually it's an unfortunate unfortunate chapter of this country that we as a journalist frequently face this type of problem. And I think that Dr. Yunus, it's a great failure of him that he take the mandate of uprising, on kind of revolutionary mandate, but he also fails to take a severe action. But of course, it's not a very separate incident. It's the sequence of previous incidents, and the Awami League was actually the main responsible for starting this kind of anarchy against journalism and journalists.
Shafqat Rabi, the fact that there are very strong Islamist forces at work now in Bangladesh, that there is a certain danger associated with that, with the elections coming up for the future of Bangladesh itself. Is this, a scenario where, secular parties, political parties in Bangladesh have essentially disappeared? The Awami League was a very strong secular movement. Is there a fear that the Bangladesh of tomorrow, post the elections, will be very different?
So thanks for bringing me back here. Let's talk about the Hadi incident first, because that is the defining moment of the last few weeks.
Yes.
Hadi was a cultural activist. He was probably the most consequential cultural activist, a young person over the last maybe few decades in Bangladesh. His funeral was attended by close to 1 million people. And these are all mostly the Gen Zs who watch Hadi's nationalistic messages on social media millions of times a day. Keeping that in the background, he was murdered by someone who fled to India, and that created this anarchy.
No, but then do we have any
seeing.
evidence of that? Because even your police, it appears, don't have evidence to suggest that.
Right. So let's say neither I nor do you have the evidence, but that's
no,
what
but
the
if there was
right
evidence, it's not been shared here, because there would be an effort to bring him back or send him back to Bangladesh. There is no lookout for killers of Hadi that we are aware of. That would have been the first thing we would have reported.
But these are legal matters. We are not talking about legal. We are talking about perception.
Exactly, it is perception, not based on fact. As of today, that's not taken place. That he's fled to India, the killers, right? What is that based on?
According to all Bangladeshi media, all responsible media, that is the news that the young people are reading. That somebody who killed.
So then who's responsible? Because that does not appear to be the case here at all. If it was the case, we would have heard it. It's the first thing we would have heard from Bangladeshi diplomats in India. That's not happening.
Right. So that's all diplomatic talk. But the perception on social media and on the newspapers is that the killers have left Bangladesh.
Yes, of course.
There are video reports. There are all kinds of reports there. But let's just follow what the people are seeing. So that's what they see, that the killers are actually in India. And these young people are very angry at this point because their most popular guy is murdered. So that is the backdrop of the anger, and unfortunately, that anger translated into these attacks on some of the establishments which are perceived to be the face of India in Bangladesh, which is Pratham Aalo and Daily Star. But now this is just the background. I'm just giving you an analytical background. So what we really have to do as responsible people to calm down the nerves a little bit and explain people that attacking newspapers is not the right thing to do. And all the responsible parties in Bangladesh are actually doing that, including Bangladesh Nationalist Party, Jamaat Islami, all the major parties are all on the same page that what had happened to Daily Star, what had happened to Pratham Aalo is not the right thing to do. So let's clear that. It's not sponsored by mainstream people in Bangladesh. Like even Arafat was saying a moment ago, the majority of the people are not violent or extremists. So this is not an Islamist takeover of Bangladesh by any means. Hadi's supporters or followers are not Islamists, quote unquote. They are followers of Bangladeshi nationalism, independence, sovereignty, things like that. These are the new things of this modern era derived through the social media. So terming everybody an Islamist and rejecting them outright is a policy that we followed over the last 15 years, and that has also resulted in what...
No, I take your point that we need to be careful about how we label the protesters in this country. But that said, Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti, the fact that there is this massive social media and media sort of reportage in Bangladesh that, the killers of Hadi have come to India, that sort of fuels the present scenario.
And so now, Vishnu, the social media is now the new tool of narrative building and perception management. This we have seen even in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, Maldives, everywhere we have seen this. Now, who fuels this is, of course, the question. We have our views on who did it, how it was happened, because if you remember, the quota agitation, as it was called, actually began in 2012, or even earlier, maybe just after after independence, when these rules were formed. But then suddenly the Supreme Court, High Court, Supreme Court got into the act because cases were filed, and the Supreme Court actually abolished the quota. This is not being discussed, that the Supreme Court of Bangladesh abolished the quota, reduced it to, I think, 7% or something. And the agitation actually died down for a few days, maybe 48 hours. Yet, after 48 hours, it was again ignited.
Right.
Now, there are a lot of things there as to how this happened, because I think the forces that wanted Hasina out thought that this was a good opportunity and we should not let it go. So there was a regime change operation.
Yes.
I won't name it, but definitely there was. There's no doubt about it. My information and I'm quite convinced that there was. And there are names also floating around if you want to know.
We'll come to that later on. But I agree with you, sir, when you say that this was something which was triggered. We leave it for the moment. I think the focus needs to be on settling this very dire situation. Protests outside missions, nobody wants that. And then trying to find a way forward. But thank you all very much for being with us tonight. I'm out of time for the moment. Goodbye.